Hello, my name is Elisha. This is my final project. I decided to try and recreate Pong using the SFMLGraphics and SFPhysics. I think I succeeded to the extent that I think is capable of my abilities. I guarantee, I know it sounds strange, but I guarantee that I did not copy this off of anywhere. I did a lot of this without any help from the internet because the help from the internet wasn't really helping out that much. The one thing I did get is like how to randomize through a list or whatnot, right? But everything else here is just completely hand done by myself. So let me walk you through the code. So here we have just some get text and stuff. All of this, it's all there. This is how fast the paddles will move. You'll see later. Here we have two functions that I attempted to create. A lot of my code has old code in it because I want to showcase my progress. This did not work. So for whatever reason, it just didn't want to work. This was to start the game, reset the game with a button. It did not work. So I ended up calling it a night whenever I did that. And then I thought right before I went to bed, I was like, since it doesn't like that, I might just have to shove all of it into main, which I did. It's a little messy. I kind of dislike that fact that it is messy, but it made it work. So here is the function that allows me to move each paddle. The paddle on the left side can move with W and S, and the paddle on the right side will be moved with up and down. So here's where we get to like the big stuff. This creates the window, the world, and whatnot. The gravity isn't set to 1, it's set to half of that. This is a randomizer. This you'll see later. This creates the ball, of course. It's made the radius a little bit smaller. This was an old attempt. What I wanted to do was make the ball hit the goal. Of course, I wanted to reset and have the ball start in the center again, to where you would then again press space to make it start or whatnot, right? So at first I wanted to remove the ball completely from the world and just spawn in a new one. That wasn't working. This was my attempt at it. I went all over the place. I ended up even trying to make a list with just one ball in it and trying to remove it, but it would close the window as soon as it removed it, so it just didn't work. So this is what creates the paddles, basically just rectangles, smaller, thinner rectangles. The goals, same thing. The floors, this is so the ball doesn't fall through the map on the bottom. It also makes it to where it bounces off the top of the window. This is just the font for the score and whatnot. This counts is basically what counts the hits. As you can see, I have these two labs up. I took some of this from those labs. This thud and floor count, the reason I did this, also here are the two scores. There's two scores. But this was, in fact, an attempt at fixing a bug. So basically all this does is separates the collisions with the floor versus the ball. This starts the clock and whatnot, keeps time in the world. What I could have done is have it to where the user can set their own score, but right now I have it to just 5 by default. So when either person scores 5 goals or whatnot, the game will just end. This is the collision for the ball. Basically, what I have it doing is resetting the ball after it hits the goal and adding a score. So basically score 2 will go up once it hits the left goal or whatnot. This was my resolution to that earlier bug. So instead of removing the ball, I'm just gonna have its position reset, its velocity reset, because I found out that if you don't reset the velocity of the ball to like 0, it'll keep the same like velocity that it had before it hit the goal. And so you would press start to start the game, and then the ball would just go flying at light speed, so you have to reset that. These just reset the paddles to their spots as well. This was a later change. This was like one of the last changes. This is the same exact code, just for the right goal. So I basically said, hey, if the ball hits the paddle or either paddle, it's going to apply more impulse in the opposite direction. And what this will do is just slowly but surely increase the speed that the ball is going per hit, so it'll make it more difficult as you volley more and more, so it adds a little bit more difficulty to it. So this is how I start the game. This is what one of those earlier functions was supposed to be. So basically, if started is false and the keyboard is press space. I had a lot of different iterations of this. I tried doing it outside of main or outside of the while function. It has to happen within the while function from what I saw. This for loop is kind of weird. This randomizes that array from earlier. It's gonna take the ball away from being static so it can actually fall and hit the ground and whatnot. It's also going to imply that impulse, and this is why I have that random array there. The ball will start off in the center, but depending on what this array says the impulse is, it'll either go left or right at like varying speeds. Another thing I thought about doing is potentially having an if-then statement, basically saying if the goal that it was scored on was like, say, the right goal, the ball would fly to the right. But I thought of that later, and I think having it just be random is fine as is. And then it says started to true, so this doesn't loop upon itself. This is what resets the game. Basically, if you're in the window and you press the number 1 key, everything just resets basically. Started, set to falls, scores are reset, paddles are centered, the ball is centered, whatnot. This was my attempt at trying to close the game. It doesn't close everything, but it does close the game window. This draws everything else. This is the game over screen. I decided not to have this displayed because I kind of just want game over to show on its own separate screen. And yeah, that's basically it. And yeah, so this is basically the game. As you can see, move up and down left with the up and down arrow keys, W and S. You can move up and down on the left side of the screen. You press space, it starts the game. Look at me go. As you can see, the more it volleys, the faster it gets. And once again, as you can see, if it hits the right side of the screen, the score goes up. Let me see if I can get the same to happen on the left side. So now the right guy has scored 1, resets the game, scores been reset, paddles have been reset, ball's been reset, and I believe I've showcased everything that there is to showcase within this tiny little world. Look at that. Very nice. The escape button closes the window. No inputs are going through, no spaces, nothing's coming through here. There are indeed some bugs in the system. Now, the number 1 bug, I will say, is definitely the fact that you didn't see it in the example. However, the ball has the tendency, once it's volleyed enough, I should say, it has the tendency to go fast enough to go through one of the paddles. It's very strange behavior. It happens every now and then. I'm not entirely too sure how to remedy it. However, the best way I found to do that is by lowering the speed of the applied impulse. This used to be -0.1 and this used to be 0.1. Reduce that, fix the problem to an extent. Still happens every now and then if you volley for long enough. Second issue, there's a chance that the ball, when hit at the right speed and at the right angle, will go through the bottom left or right corner of the window, and it won't count as a score. It'll just go through the floor. Not entirely sure why that happens. You can reset the game. It'll reset the ball perfectly fine, but it will go through sometimes. It's only happened maybe twice. I'm not sure why. It's a very rare case. The last bug, and probably one of the bigger bugs, is the fact that delta time milliseconds, this is kind of like your frame rate for the game, kind of sort of. However, if I change this off of 0 and change it to, say, for example, 5 and try to run this, the ball, it'll start phasing through stuff. Not entirely sure why that is. This needs to be 0, constantly updating. So yeah, that's basically it. Didn't have enough time to really fix all the itty gritty kinks. I attempted to, just couldn't figure it out in time, really. But thank you for watching, and hope to see you in the next one, I guess.